A very good evening and a warm welcome to the NDLI Club's 26th global event. I am Dr. Vignesh and I am part of the National Digital Library of India's team. As many of you are aware, the National Digital Library hosts over 8.7 crore knowledge resources in partnership with over 598 content partners from across the globe. As part of our outreach exercise, we have been encouraging the educational institutions to set up NDLI clubs primarily to promote the culture of reading, especially among the young generation. And today, we have over 3,883 NDLI clubs that are operational across the country. And for today's global event, we are very pleased to have Mr. Vikram Sridhar, who is a performance storyteller and a theatre practitioner. And Vikram has over 20 years of experience in theatre, conservation, and social work. And he holds a mechanical engineering from the Anna University and a management degree from the IIT Madras. And then he moved on to become a full-time arts practitioner after working for consulting and marketing domains with IBM and SAP. And he basically shuttles between Bangalore and Chennai, and he has traveled across the country, and he has spoken at multiple events on the power of stories and theater, like the TEDx, and he was quoted in various media as well. And I have known Vikram for almost more than 5 years now, and he believes in the Desi way of storytelling as a strong medium of conservation from nature to human relationship. As most of his stories are rooted in folklore, myths, and legends inspired from various communities of the soil. And I think his one of his favorite principles is he believes a story a day keeps the doctor away, not an apple. So that's his philosophy. And for our audience, he's going to help us in understanding how useful the storytelling in facing interviews and landing in your next job. So that's what he is going to talk to us today. Now, I would like to formally welcome Mr. Vikram Sridhar to start his presentation. And I also like to welcome each one of you for this session. Over to Vikram.
Thanks, Dr. Vignesh, and thanks to all the viewers of NDLI, and thanks to NDLI for creating this space for sharing my little world of storytelling into your entire world of facing not just interviews, or it could also be facing any groups. So, my name is Vikram Sridhar, like how Sir said, and like the Betal, I just tell stories. I tell stories to audiences, I listen to stories, and that's all I do for a living. And if you all are watching me on YouTube, I quickly want you to tell me, what did you all have for lunch? It's 6 o'clock. If you're all in India, lunch. If you're in any other part of the world, the last meal that you all had. I can't see your answers, so quickly, if you can give me those beautiful dishes that you all have across the world, what did you have as a last meal? So, what did you have for your last meal? And if you tell me, I shall wait. And then, was it rice? Was it chapati? Was it sambar? Somebody says fish and rice and sambar. What else did you all have? Let's see, what else do you have? Let's see, what do you have? Vada pav and rice and nice thing, bananas. Lovely. Idli, super. So yummy. So if you all had your lunch or your snack, just stretch yourself a little bit, because we'll go through a little bit of an activity and see how interviews, stories, and before we say stories in India, we all say, let's listen to a story. Hi, like I said, my name is Vikram, and like the Betal, I tell stories. And the next few minutes, I want you to just relax, no notes, just your heart. That's all I want. Super. So keep answering, what do you all have your meal, so that I keep relishing on it. Coffee, vada, lovely, idli, vada sambar, beautiful. And as you keep sharing, let me see if you all can see my little screen right out here. Super. Can you all identify this person on the screen? So this person at once upon a time was extremely scared to meet people. And this person here grew up in a school, grew up in a city called Madras at that time, which is now Chennai. And every time this person had to face an audience or people or even teachers and professors, he used to be stammering a lot because he was a first generation English speaker. His parents went to a government Tamil school and didn't even finish school. Did not even, I think they last day they told me, they said, sixth, seventh, sometime there, we left the school. And that's where I used to be very conscious of meeting people. And every time I used to meet people, my preparation of my dress, my clothes, my tie, my shirt, and interviews, that's going to scare me. But over time, today, all I do is meet people and tell people stories. And
Vikram, can you
story and
space the screen?
yes, sir.
Yeah, the slideshow, if you can put that, would be easy.
Okay, is it better now, sir? No, I'm just in the same screen.
Yeah, but like, is there a slideshow or something so
Yeah,
that
yeah. So
the
right now it's only a photo. I've not moved yet.
okay, tick, fine.
And when storytelling started in my life, I realized everybody in this world, especially people you grew up with, and we grow in a culture called stories. And now tell me, in your life, what is story called in your mother tongue or father tongue? Tamil kada, Kannadathula katha. What is it in your language? What is the word for story in your language? What is a word that you all use for stories? Is it kata, kata, go, golpo, or stories? And that's where meeting people for me slowly started getting better. And when story and telling came together, interviews was just in between the story and the telling. Because isn't it even in an interview meeting somebody a human being? Yes or no? And they're not dinosaurs. They're not, the interviewer is not somebody who's come from Mars or Venus. They're just human beings, right? It's just like meeting another person. Now you all can see the screen, right? Can you all identify which movie this is? And have you seen this movie? It's come in Hindi, it's come in Tamil, it's come in Telugu, Kannada, Malayalam, of course. If you've seen this movie, give me yes or no if you've not seen it. In whatever language that you all connect with.
The slide has not moved.
Now, okay. I don't know, I'm moving the slide, it's still not moving.
Maybe you can stop sharing and then reshare it again. Okay,
One minute.
now it has come.
Okay. Super. Then let me, I think it's going to be in the, I'll keep it in this mode. I think full screen mode is. Okay. So tell me, what do you see? Have you seen this movie? Drishyam is what this movie is. If you've seen it, give me a yes. And if you've seen it, I want you to think of this movie for the next few minutes as we go through this talk. Drishyam in Tamil was called Papanasam. In other languages, it's Drishyam. Otherwise, don't worry, it's just a movie. Think of any movie that you all watched recently and just put it in the chat. What is the last movie that you all watched in the last 15 days? Put that in the chat. And like a movie, we are connecting with people, and a lot of times, what we tell people does not stick to people. What we tell people about doesn't stick to people. What we tell people, what happened, doesn't stick to people. But how we tell it is how people remember. My name is Vikram, and like the Betal, I tell a story for a living. Will you remember my name at least for the next few minutes? Because every time an interview starts, you'll be asked to introduce yourself. And the first line itself can be a story. Because how you introduce yourself is how somebody is going to remember you for the next few minutes. And before I get into the next thing, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, it was the 1980s. In the 1980s, remember the early period 1983? Anybody remembers what happened in 1983? One of the iconic here for India. And in 1983, there was a mama and a papa, and the mama and papa were expecting the second child. And the second child was coming after 4 years, and the first child was a boy, And so they wanted the second child to be a girl so that they could have like a square family. And with all the drama and all the oomph and excitement in the house, they said, okay, we're going to have a girl baby, so let's name the girl baby. And because they had to name the girl baby, they thought of a musical name like many girl children in India. And they thought of names across using different sources like movies, friends, songs, neighbor. And if you think of a musical girl's name, put that in the chat. And they thought of all that names that could come to their mind. And they Googled, in those days, remember 1983, what would Google be? And they sat down and they said, okay, let's get on to all these names. And they chose the longest name in that. And the longest name in that they could find, and they found it extremely musical, was Sangeeta. And so some of us who know the singer called S.P. Balasubramaniam, his daughter and son is called Pallavi and Charan, named after the musical elements of Pallavi and Charan. And so they said, Sangeeta is going to come into this world. And they were waiting for Sangeeta every minute. And the months passed, and few days passed, and it became the time of Diwali of 1983. And the Diwali 1983 was in November, the first week. And November 1st went past, 2nd went past, 3rd went past, and the 4th arrived. And it was the main day of Diwali. And Diwali, about 5 days, was celebrated, and it was the peak of Diwali. And the brother had gone out to celebrate his Diwali with his friends and the neighbors. Remember 80s? Less of apartments, more of independent houses and on the streets. And the mother and the father had some commitments he had to attend. And so the mother was at home and she was about 11 months pregnant with a baby who was only 4.5 kilos. And that's when she gave a scream. And she screamed, and in the entire neighborhood heard her. And that was the time of landline phones, phones which had the ones and zeros away from each other. So for zero, you have to do all the way round and round. And the neighbors dialed for the ambulance. And the father was informed through varied sources, and the mother was rushed to the hospital. Bam, 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 bam. The ambulance rushed into the hospital. And when it rushed to the hospital, it went to the ICU. And after a few minutes, the baby entered the world. And when the baby entered the world, the mother looked at the baby because the baby was not just a small baby. And remember, babies which are a little larger have names of sweet dishes: laddu, bonda, jalebi. And this baby was like a laddu baby. And the mother looked at the laddu baby saying, oh my God, Sangeeta has arrived into this world. And she looked at the baby, but the baby was not a girl. The baby was a boy. And the mother started crying now. And she turned and cried. But this baby was giggling. And the next few minutes, everybody in the hospital came. Everybody in the family came. And the notorious person in the baby's life, like all of us who have siblings, whom we love and sometimes hate also, came and said, what? You said it's going to be a sister, but another brother. And went away. And then came the nurse of the hospital. And she tried lifting this baby full like, and just couldn't lift because the baby was a little difficult to lift. And the baby was tried. And finally, she got a hiccup because the baby was weight. Ah, 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 and her hiccup was so loud that the entire hospital said, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? And the baby started laughing at her on the baby. And when the baby laughed, she stopped hiccuping and she put the little baby down and looked at the baby's face. And she asked the mother, what's the baby's name? कौन सा पेरेंट है वो छोटा छोटा बच्चा का नाम क्या है? And this little baby, of course, was called Sangeeta, but the mother said we thought Sangeeta, but because the baby was now a boy, we didn't think of a name. And that's when the nurse said, I have a name. Because the baby gave me hiccup, and hiccup in Tamil is called Vikkal, maybe you should take, of course, you can't call the baby hiccup, take the Vic. And because in 1983, there were many Vikrams, Vikram Sarabhai, Vikram Betal, Vikram the movie, maybe you should call this baby Vikram. And that's how this Vikram got his name. And that's a story for you of the name itself. So if you have 1 second to tell your name, my name is Vikram, and like the Betal, I tell stories. You get 5 minutes, maybe tell your story, because somebody who's listening will also connect your stories. So now that you've listened to the story, will you remember my story or my name for some more hours or some more days? Give me a yes or a no. And that's where storytelling comes into place. So, storytelling is just not about telling a fact, but it's about how you deliver a fact. And what do stories help us to do with facts and information? And because we are technically very strong, we all have done our homework. We know our subjects very well, extremely well. But how we deliver it to the listener is what I'm going to talk to you about. Because if you tell it as a story, it's very simple to share. You don't have to even remember in and out of the detailing. Second, for the interviewer, it's easy to remember. And the third, there is an emotional connect. How many of you could connect to my story when I shared it? You didn't know me. You might have not heard of me before at all. And all of you would have been seeing me for the first time. But how many of you could connect to my story? And that is what storytelling does to us. It builds a way of sharing which is extremely simple. You don't have to be great in your language because it's our language. And each of us speak our own type of English, our own vernacular language, but it's very simple to use. Number two, it's easy to remember for the person who's listening to us. And third, it builds an emotion. Instead of telling sir or ma'am, my name is Vikram, I was born in Madras, is that an emotion? Or the way I shared, is that an emotion for the listener? You might not be from Madras, you might be from anywhere part of the India or world, but the hospital, birth, mother, father, sibling, somewhere there would have been a connect. And that is what storytelling does. So, what is a story? How can we make that a part of an interview? Now, keep the name story with you. And like I said, remember the movie if you watched recently, and let's see how it'll go a little forward. Like how you watch a movie or read a book, you all remember the first opening of a movie, how it opens. Maybe look at even a Salman Khan or a Rajinikanth or the opening of a movie, how strong it is. Similarly, the way that you answer or you address a question, the starting of that is very important. We can't take time to say, I think, because by the time we are giving a sense to the interviewer that this person is trying to gather something, but it's not confident. So, starting Big Bang. So, like a story, a starting of the answer that the interviewer asks is extremely important. Number two, once we started it, we also have to understand where we set our answers in. For example, a lot of interviews, some of you in college, the interviewer is asking, give me a certain time in your college that you faced a problem. Instead of saying, during my culturals, there was a problem in budget. I worked with my team and solved the budget problem. That could be an answer. But instead, if you say, in 2019, our department, the mechanical engineering department, had the cultural festival for the year. And our college, you can name the college, for now I'm using Anna University, or the college I studied it called SRM. Our college, which is located a little outside Madras, is one of the largest in India. And in 2019, we were celebrating our 20th year of a cultural festival. And we had planned to have it in 2020. And because we didn't know what was coming, we had planned a lot of activities and we had sent proposal for a lot of budget. And beginning of 2020, like everybody else, we were also struck by the pandemic and we didn't know what to do. We had wanted to have an offline in-campus cultural festival, but now pandemic, lockdown, everybody was at home. We didn't know what to do, and that made all of us panic. Now I pause with this. And this is your setting. You set where your answer is happening. And moment you set that, the person who's listening is going to go a little closer and say, and then what happened? And that's what the setting does. Because the setting can be the place, it could be a campus, it could be a city, but how we describe the setting. You can even say my college has, let's say, 15 departments, has canteens in every department, has bus facility, and you can go as detailed depending on the time. In 1 minute or 10 minutes, depending on the time, you can explain the setting. And like you see a movie or a book, how they'll explain the setting so in detail so that our curiosity is raised. And once you've finished the setting of your answer, the third will be where the next part of stories will come. That would be your characters. And once your characters are going to be touched, and these characters could be starting from you. We are the character in our story, right? How many of you feel we are the protagonist or the hero heroine in our stories? Give me a yes. Because when we tell our stories, aren't we the protagonist? And that's where the characters come in. And there you can say, in the cultural festival, we had a team where I was a part of the finance team along with three other people. I can even say that the finance team had about 10 people and I was among that. That's one way of saying. Instead, I was part of the finance team along with 10 other people because we are the protagonist of our story. Never forget that. Because when you answer somebody's question, put yourself as the main character. And that is where characters come in. And you add characters. You can add your friends, your professors, and as many characters as possible in that story. And if you want to detail the character, again you can give a detail. Saying I was in the third year of college, and we had the team from first year, second year, fourth years, and we also had alumni as a part of it. And some of the professors, the other department professors, were also involved as people who were advising us. And there was external advisory, there was internal advisory, and the character that's involved in the story. And again, I repeat, once you start the story, set the story. Once you set the story, talk about the characters. And once the characters are established, like in my characters, in my story, I said, there is the mother, there is a child, there is a nurse, there is a brother, there is a father. But each one plays a different role. And this is something that's extremely important in what makes a story and not what you give information and what we call the conflict. So college is happening, the cultural festival is happening, the characters are there, the setting is there, but what happens? And that is where the pandemic struck. And the pandemic came in March 2020. And some of us, if you know the date in which the lockdown was announced, put that in the chat window. Because if there was no conflict, the festival would have happened as it is. And because there was a conflict, and that becomes a story. And that is exactly what the interviewer wants. And I'm sure some of you would have, when you faced interviews, you'll see the question will be how you overcame something. And that overcoming is what is the conflict. And that is what you establish. And that is when the pandemic stuck. And it can be another conflict, another story. It could be another situation. It can be some of you are in your masters and you've gone and had experiences in working. Pick up a work scenario, and the conflict could be a customer's deadline, for example. And suddenly, the customer called and said, "We want the project to be delivered in 2 weeks. not in 4 weeks. And that's a conflict. And in master's students, for example, you could talk about your project, for example, and how you overcame a conflict in your project. If there is no problem, there is no story, right? And that is where the conflict comes in. And once the conflict is established, and that is when the full that music goes. What next? And that's where we take our answers. So once you start your answers, give it a setting, give it the characters, and create a conflict, and then comes all that is okay. But how did you solve the problem? How did you find a resolution? And that is your next level. Once you have the problem, once you have the conflict, how do you find the resolution? And that is your answer. And that is what the interviewer is expecting, right? And for every question they're asking, that's what they expect. They want you to take you through a small experience and how to resolve it. And because the pandemic struck, we were all given a notice that no financial support, no sponsors are available for the 2020 Cultural Fest. And then we all got together, and how we address this problem, we can either cancel the cultural fest or adapt the new normal, which was have it online. And so we said, okay, we don't have funding. Well, okay, but we can go online because going online doesn't need transport, doesn't need a big setup. And so we devised a new way of holding the entire festival online. And we were among the first colleges in India to hold a cultural festival online. And that's how we resolved the conflict that happened. Another scenario could be, and because the customer had given a deadline of 2 weeks or not 4 weeks, we decided that we all will work 2 hours every day so that our productivity and our deadline could be committed to, and how the conflict was resolved. And then the last thing that happens in a story that helps the same way how we end a conversation or talking, and sometimes where do we stop? And a lot of us have this tendency of keep going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? But when do we stop? And that's what an interviewer is also looking at. Answer is very nice, but where do you stop? And that's what I say is even more important than the resolution is how do you end your talking? And where do you end it? And then you say that. And then in June, July 2020, we had a cultural festival. And when we had a cultural festival, we had a footfall of about 30,000 people across India. Instead of generally people coming across the country, we have about 5,000 to 10,000 people. Because it was online, we achieved a new milestone of about 30,000 people, 40,000 people. And that's your ending. How do you end? And once you end it, and that's what completes the way that we share or respond to the question of an interviewer. So it's like a small journey, right? You see the small journey? Like I said, it starts with an opening, and then you establish the characters, and then you talk about where it happens, and then you talk about a conflict, and then how you resolve the conflict, and then how do you bring it to an end. And that is the same way a story is, which is similar to how in an interview we address the question. And that is a way, like I said, is a simple way that we address any question. And think of any question a interviewer is asking. For example, what do you want to see yourself in 20 years? Again, it has a starting of an answer. You need to establish who are the characters in 20 years. In 20 years, of course, we won't be in college, right? In 20 years, we're going to have a family. You might have a company, you might be working in a company, and so establish the characters in that, and then talk about what you see as a conflict that will help you to achieve what you want in 20 years and how you'll resolve it in 20 years. And then you end with a response. And this slide, for example, summarizes what I shared. It talks about your beginning, your setting of your answers, the characters in the answers, the conflict, what happens in the particular scenario, and then how you resolve it, and then how do you end your answer. And ending is not the resolution, but how do you end the conversation. And that is what for the interviewer is what you give, how you give it. What you put in is absolutely yours. For example, let's say they ask you, tell us briefly about your final year project. You begin the answer saying, my final year project started in so and so time, and then I had my partners, my co-project mates who were so and so. These are the characters and the space. You can say I did it in a particular industry, or I did it internally in my college, or we did it together in a home-based space, or let's say in a small startup environment. We did it, and then you put a conflict in it, because once you see a conflict, and no journey in our life is without a conflict. And once we enter the conflict, and then we did this on a particular, let's say, a new or alternate energy, or a new source of battery which is extremely small, the smallest battery that could be loaded in a car. I mean, any topic. And then how you overcame that and how you finally made it work as a resolution. And then you say that today that project is being used by 3 companies in so and so city. And that's an ending. An ending is something like a positive note, and that you offer to the interviewer. And that, now you think of any question, you can answer it in 1 minute or even 5 minutes. And every time an interviewer asks you, they will also tell you, can you answer in 5 minutes your 12th standard journey? Because a lot of us who don't have work experience, our school, college is a reference point, right? And how do we do that? Like I said, I can tell my answer of my what's your name in 10 seconds. I can answer it in 5 minutes. And how I give it to the interviewer is how they're going to remember us also. Do you want the interviewer to remember or forget us? And that's where I say it's not what you give. You can say in 12th standard, I studied in so and so school, I got so many marks, and I took majors in science or commerce, and I got so many percentage. That's not what they're expecting, because all that is available in our resume, right? And what is in the resume is not what you have to talk. They can absolutely see it. What you need to share is the how. They want to see the person of the resume. They want to see the person on the curriculum vitae. And this way of storifying your answers will give that emotion to the interviewer. And with that, you'll finish. But I'm going to say, there are going to be different types of interviewers. I hope you can see the x-axis. There are generally 5 different ways of interviewers, and each interviewer will have a different personality. And the first type is called the interrogator, who questions like why all the time, saying why did you take the subject, why did you choose this project, why did you choose this college. That's sort of a very strong interviewer. The second type of interviewer will be somebody who follows rules all the time. What is how an interview has to be? They'll stick to the rules of an interview. Whatever interview is, because they would have just come with that ready, and they will go by the books, and you sort of know what they're expecting you, questions that you're going to get. The next type of interviewer, the third type, is somebody who is no nonsense, who's technically very sound, and also expects those answers to be very, very, very strong from you. So they can't take no for an answer. They will question everything, and this is what we call the no nonsense interviewer. The fourth is not one person, but sometimes you have 3 people asking questions, 2 people asking questions, or what we call the panel. And sometimes they will be like what we say a group people, like a group of, like, they'll come and bombard. Each one has a different way of questioning, and you know whom to see, this way, that way, this way, that way. And the fifth type is what we call like somebody who's a best friend who'll make you very comfortable. And they'll ask you, do you want water? How did you feel? What did you have breakfast? What did you eat last? And then they'll start talking. And some of them will be a mix of two types, or some of them will be extremely one type or more than one type. But these are generally different types of interviewing people. And the y-axis, if you see, and in the type of interview, it could be a structured interview where they know they start and go and start and go. It's sometimes very informal, where whatever you answer, they'll make a question out of that. And that is something that's the way interview process happens. So the process of an interview could be very structured. The process could be extremely friendly, and or it could be a mix of both. And then the interview, and whatever it is, like an arc, you begin, you have a middle, you have an ending. And when you enter the interview, that is as important as when you finish and you end the interview. And that is similar, like I said, to a movie. You start a movie and you remember how many times you've said, oh, the climax didn't work for me. The entire movie would have been good, but because the climax didn't work, it didn't sit with us. And that is something that similar to the way interview is. The interview might have gone fantastic, but the end, how do you finish it? The thank you, or hope to see you soon. Thank you for your time. I had a wonderful time talking to you. How you end it is something that's important. And that again can be in vernacular. Please, if your vernacular is Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Bangla, Gujarati, please use it in interview, because we have to embrace our language. It's our languages. So never, never, never think that English is the only language I need to use. English is also a language. So whatever language is comfortable, please be confident in that. And that's way the interview also connects with us. And after this, I summarize quickly so that in case some of you joined in late will also sort of get an understanding how and why I use the word responses, because in an interview, you're all of us, what we're doing is only responding to the interviewer, right? The interviewer has questions, and if you can think of interview questions, put it in the chat. Let's see if some of us can find a storied answer to that. And every time they ask a question, you can take a pause. You don't have to even respond immediately. And then you think, okay, how do I answer this? And then you start with saying that, okay, starting, you create that space, you create the characters, you create the conflict, you create the resolution and the ending. Think of any question an interviewer is going to ask. Let's say, how do you think India is going to be in 2040? Same thing. You have a starting, and in 2040, what the characters of India? It could be economy, it could be GDP, it could be industrialization. These are the characters that you're using in the story, and then the setting, of course, is already India, and then you say the conflict is what here. What it can be the conflict is the other countries' economy, and how India is facing that, and then you're going to say that how do you solve that? Find the resolution 2040, and then you end it. Why should we hire you? Beautiful. Again, if that for that answer, what is the setting? The company that's going to hire you or the company that you're interviewing is the setting. The character is you. The conflict is very simple. The very reason that they're hiring you is a conflict, right? They need somebody to work for them. If there's already somebody working for them in the particular role, why would they even hire us? So that's a conflict, which means you, the person, will help them to overcome the need of that role, and that's your resolution. And the end is how you end it. What is your strengths and weaknesses? Don't name the strengths and weaknesses, give a scenario. A lot of times when I've interviewed people, they'll say, oh, my strength is I can work for 9 hours. That's not your strength, but how has it become your strength is what you need to say. And same thing with weakness. A lot of times, one strength is somebody's weakness. So framing the scenario of the strength and weakness will help you to convey it better. For example, like you say, my strength is I can, uh, let's say, I can convert a project in 2 days. Good. Give a scenario. Give a story about it. And weakness again. And my weakness is I believe strangers very easily. Well, that's a straight answer, right? I'm saying that is there's no emotion to that. Instead, give an example. Once when I was traveling, this is what happened, and so I believe this is my weakness. Where do you see 5 years from now? 5 years simple. In 5 years, what is your setting? Setting is not college. It could be 5 years. It's a gratuity year in a company. So 5 years, are you going to be the same company, different city? That's going to be a setting. Character is yourself. It could be a manager or your other stakeholder in the company. The conflict here is how do I grow? And resolution is what do I grow into? And that's what they expect. So if you say in 5 years I see myself as a manager, that's not the expecting. But give it a certain narrative. What is your hobbies, for example? Hobbies, again, for example, if you say, oh, my hobby is carom board, my hobbies is cricket. Okay, so what? And then say, give it another dimension. And so last time when India was playing against so and so, I was watching it and I gauged that India would take so many runs. And that's one of the reasons why I love cricket as a hobby. And same thing with painting. So whenever I am with myself, I sit back and sketch, pencil sketching, and that's one of my hobbies. And my recent sketching was about the palm tree. Why do you want to change the stream? So there's a conflict. Immediately when you say why you want to change the stream, you already see there's a conflict. And so the conflict is already set there. Characters again you, the space is again your it can be the company that you're hiring you or the company that you're going from, and your resolution. Saying that conflict could be, well, I've been working in this space for so many years, but now I see an internal conflict that my productivity is going down, and I want to. One of the ways that I want to address that is by changing a stream because I've always had an interest, let's say, in advertising. So if I can shift to advertising, I definitely hope I could increase my productivity back. So that's another. Why would I hire you? I think that's been addressed. So why would I hire you? As simple as that, saying that because when you're hiring, you already have the companies put out a certain role, saying this is what they require. That itself is a conflict. Company has having a gap there. Why MBA after BTech? Well, I did my BTech and I did my BE and then engineering. So there is a conflict there also, right? I mean, and be authentic to your answers. You don't have to make up an answer. And moment you make up an answer, what we'll do is we'll do So what we can say is, I think management skills are extremely important to the industry. And as a person, I believe that I could study now than later, and hence that is the conflict. In my own self, I'm a type of person where if I take a break, I don't think I'll come back to study. So I want to finish my study. I want to study immediately and then finish it. And the resolution is I completed it and now I'm ready for the interview. Why only this company when you have certain other options? Well, you believe in this company, right? You have to believe in that. I mean, because of all the other companies, you've taken a call, you've chosen, you put your analysis. I'm sure some of you know what a SWOT analysis is. And my analysis, I found this particular company in the conflict of choices, because my choice itself is a conflict. And because I have choices of 10 companies, that in that my resolution is this particular company had so and so opportunities, and so I believe this is the best for me. And then that's why I'm here.
Sure. So thank you so much, Vikram. So I also have a few questions. I think more than me, the participants have a lot of questions. So I
Sure.
just want to put in few questions for you. Tell us about your experience of facing an interview. So you worked with IBM and SAP. How has been your experience in attending your first interview?
So so normally what happens is in campus we've been this interview process was always like entering a cage of a zoo, right? I mean we know what's going to happen inside. So that has always been the one of the ways that we've been told in colleges. So the preparation is always like, okay, I'm going to this is my toughest day in my life, and we always think this is the toughest day in my life. 10th toughest day, 12th toughest day, interview toughest day, and every day is toughest. So believing in that, I entered. But the thing was that in my first interview, I only gave 2 interviews in my life. And first interview, I got my job. Second interview was only when I had to enter another company. So that was again by referral. But what I definitely understood is there's always a human being on the other side. And There's no Bhadrakali on the other side. There's always an angel, and you have to tap that angel. And one of the ways that you can tap the angel is just by being confident and be authentic. You don't have to make up an answer. The moment you make up an answer, our confidence will go down, and people with experience can definitely understand how to be authentic.
Sure. So I think one of the things that I also personally attended a couple of interviews. I think during one of my first interviews, I was very nervous. I think most of us might go through this. So, like, what are your like views of getting over that nervousness and that tensed this environment? So, how do we overcome? Because you are in front of sitting in front of a few people who may ask you any questions which you may not know, but still you have your own what you call setbacks and have your own like conservative thinking. So, how would you overcome in that situation?
So we have a very powerful tool called hand, and the nervousness is a lot of time is exhibited by our fingers, by our hand, by our sweat, by the way we handle ourselves. Because we're wearing pant, nobody sees the nervousness in the legs. We only see the nervousness in the hand, and the hand is going to show it at any point of time. So one of the ways is to say that okay, it's always again like the arc, right? I mean, the starting is always a trouble, and once you get into it, the first few seconds it can be a new place also, and when you enter a new space, we all have nervousness in it. Take a deep breath because this moment only happens once in a lifetime, and it's magical. And it's happening for you because you are the protagonist for the next 5 minutes. And once you believe that, the next part will be a fantasy movie. Moment you think that no, I'm not protagonist, I'm only the supporting cast in that story, that nervousness will extend. Take a breath. Every speaker on the world, everybody's nervous on stage. For the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, many of them what they do is I am creating a story for the next few minutes. So I am the rock star. So each
Yes.
one of you who are entering the room are a rock star. Believe that.
And one of the tips that I would like to give from my personal experiences, like I faced during my first interview, the interviewer himself realized that I was nervous, so he offered me a glass of water. And from then onwards, whenever I go for an interview, I first ask for a glass of water, and they are most of them, 99% of them are very open and they are willing to uh, make us comfortable. So I think that is something that from my experience, that taking a glass of water and taking a deep breath, that is what does the initial teething problems. So that's one thing that you may want to convey to our readers also. And my next question to you is, you have worked in corporates. Like, how has been your experience? Like, you studied mechanical engineering, and then you did your management, and now you are a performance storyteller, and you are one of the best performance storytellers in the country. How has been your experience?
So we have this thing called work-life balance. I mean, we all think that life and corporate is very different. And today, I think we have a lot of choices to choose where we want to work with. I think as students, and I grew up in a space when which these choices weren't available because internet didn't happen till the 90s and the early 2000s. So the path was sort of standard. But today we have a lot of choices. So, and that's why today to do 2 3 things that you love along with work is possible. And that's what I used to do before. So I used to work, I love my work, but we all have multiple interests. I mean, we all believe, nobody here in the world only says that I only love to work all the time. Nobody, everybody has. And even, let's say, even a dancer or a singer likes to do other things. So when I was working, I put my seeds in things that I loved. One is, of course, my work. I mean, I studied for it. I studied. I'm one of the 5 people out of 100 in my batch who didn't have an arrear, and in those times, it was very, very, very not easy to come out without an arrear. So, I mean, and which means I was even a university topper in 2 3 semesters. So, having done that, I loved my subject. So it's never going away from what I did, and we all will go through that throughout our careers in life. There will happen a time in which there is a possibility to have an alternate career, but we need to put the seeds for it, and don't be averse to it. For example, if you're saying today I'm studying a particular subject. Is that subject going to be the rest of my life? Not necessarily. It's going to help you in the near future, and that's what happened to me. And step by step, for me, it took me to where I am today. And today I'm enjoying it. If I don't enjoy it today, how will I enjoy tomorrow? And when I was working, I enjoyed work life. And today I'm working this type of work.
Great, great, great. So another question from one of the audience is like when the company asked for the package, how much package are you are expecting? I think one of the participants raised it. So from your experience, what could be the ideal answer for such kind of questions, especially for freshers who doesn't know any market there? So what is your suggestion?
Well, that's one of the toughest questions to answer. But if you're a fresher, I think the beauty is to accept, because you need a first step to keep in. So I think go with the company and don't give an answer. The moment you give an answer, I think you're also in a space where they're going to answer you back. So there is no answer to that. And package, I think finance, even today, for example, when I have to do a show, for me, money is important, but that's not the first thing. It'd be the last thing. Because what type of work I'm going to do puts my step for my tomorrow's work. And that's how I think when you're voicing a first interview, for you to answer that thing, work is important. You like the type of work. Trust me, everybody that we all get inspiration from, always put the type of work we love to do, and finance will definitely follow, because our academic system will definitely equip us to find the financial sustenance. But I would say, look at the work, and as an interview also, are you? I mean, that will be more exciting for someone to hire us, saying that are you excited about the work? And that's many CEOs have said. Always hire people who are excited by the work more than people who are even talented.
Sure. So I think from my experience also that has been the case. Like I think most of the end question is like they reserve this question in most of the interviews at the end. What is your expectation? How much you are drawing? What is your expectation? And especially for young like freshers, it's like you don't even know what is going to be offered, and you don't have any expectations, right? And that is when I think, as you rightly pointed out, focus on the work. So it depends on the company policy. The one of the simplest answers is like it depends on the nature of work that I'm going to do. I'm sure I think it's going to be exciting. And the next part is you can always tell them, like, as per, I'm sure the company has a set of rules and regulations which can be which has a set of standard pay packages. I'm willing to go with as per company's policy. That's one of the simplest answers that I used to give. Maybe some of them may take it. I think that is my daughter has just paused it. Yes, another question is from Gagan. Is passion is very important than money?
Is passion more important than money? No. I mean, I'd say there are four different energies that sustain all of us. One is a financial energy, one is a spiritual energy, one is our emotional energy, and in between is family. And a lot of us do different things for the three, like finance, spiritual, and emotional. Some people do only one for all the three. So, but sustaining all the three will help us for our own internal mental health. So that is where I look at it. So passion should not come at a cost. Even passion, we need to put the steps for it. You can't say I'm passionate, so I'll just go and do, but without any basic foundation, doesn't work. So money is an energy. Passion is also an energy. Look at both as an energy.
Sure. So another question is, I think, similar to what you already addressed. We had addressed Akansha Mishra, how to reduce nervousness during the interview. I think
Like
you've
Civil Sir
already.
said, there are two types. One is your exhibiting nervousness. One is the internal nervousness. Internal nervousness is always use your hand, for example, and tell yourself that you are the rock star. This thing. External nervousness, like Sir said, maybe sip of water or have an informal question to the interview. For example, look around the room and what I say sometimes divert the interview, and that sort of makes it more comfortable for us to talk. Like I said, out of the five, they'll be all are friendly. It's just that because they've been interviewing so many people, they become this no nonsense person. Make them friendly. For example, if you see in their room, they put a photo of, let's say, Singapore. Ask them, oh, so have you been to Singapore? That's so nice. And the moment they'll say, oh yeah. So there are people love to get that connect, right?
And another one of the common strategy like questions or if you have any questions to us, so that's another way that the interviews ask to understand the what you call the pulse of the candidates. So I think like most of the candidates simply say no, we don't have any questions to you. So like if you from your experience, like what kind of questions you can ask, because it's not always a one way. So how do we respond to that kind of question?
So this is a beautiful question where they all they're doing is, are you excited about us? I think that's the simple way to put it in. And this is a time for you, for us to even show that yes, I really care and I'm really excited. And how do I show my excitement? Either to know about the talk about the company, to talk about the products in the company, that and to even show that I've done a little more homework about the company. It's like saying out of syllabus question. So this is a time that where we can say that okay, moment you say no, see a lot of time no when somebody says no to us, the emotion is very different when somebody builds a conversation. So instead of no, the idea is to very simple. Do you know something about us? And that's where they're asking you. So add a make this the time to have the conversation to show a little more emotion in your biodata.
Sure. So another question is about how would you manage time between your work and personal life?
So if you really love your work, like the life's only one life. So when you say work and personal life is different, and or you say that work is something else, then there is a conflict between us and the work, right? I mean, today there are options to a lot of us to keep looking at work that we enjoy. So, and we only have 24 hours. Like I said, there are four things that we need to balance: financial, spiritual, emotional, and family. And once you put this, see how where you're balancing out. If you're only balancing three of it and not one, there will be a problem. And this is more even from a uh, mental, our own internal mental health. For example, if you're only catering to your emotional and financial, and if you're giving a spiritual wellness, there will again be a gap. So personal work, all of it is can be balanced. And today we have technology, so even there's a lot of ways we can do WhatsApp calls and keep personal life on and work. And today entire pandemic work happened in through the internet.
So one last question, Vikram, like what advice would you give to our young audience who aspire to get a job in various fields? Like what are the few of your advices that you would give it to our young generation?
Number one, use college time to network, because I think that is something that helps us throughout. Number two is be willing to do multiple things in the first few years. I mean, there's not one type of, even if you're working somewhere, night, daytime, the first few years are such a beautiful years because we have time, physical health, and mental space to do multiple things. So be willing to explore even your passion, even your interest, work, everything you can do at that time. And third is be authentic to whatever you're doing. And that if you're and time, it'll take time. There's no immediate result. Time is a beautiful factor. And if you're authentic, all of us will grow in our own space, because some of us grow in the snail space, some of us will grow in the tiger space, some of us grow in different paces, so we don't have to compare each other. There is no one type of growth, right? Each of us have a different type of growth. So these are the three things I would say. One is network, because college time is a great space to network and know industries, know companies, know friends in other colleges, and network, network, network. Number two, do multiple things, do 5 things, 6 things, 20 things. And the third is leave time. Don't do anything in a hurry. Give it time.
Okay, one last question. I felt it's important. Should we switch company if we like the work but not getting proper growth?
It's a personal choice. I mean, sometimes you say you like the work also, right? I mean, that is also a growth. Growth doesn't have to, we have to define growth also, right? So growth is multiple. even even liking something today itself is a growth. So
Sure.
I would say, how do you measure growth? And once you're able to measure growth, you have a choice.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, Vikram, for taking out
Thank you.
time from your Friday evening and being with us. And also like to thank each one of our audience. So today we had over I think live session we had about 650 live audience for the session. So that's one of the good turn up. I'm sure I think more than 10,000 people will log in next 1 or 2 days. So once again, I would like to thank each one of you and Vikram for taking out time and sharing his experience on how to face interviews using the storytelling techniques. With this, we would like to end the session. And for all our NDLA club members, if you want to download your certificate, you can log into the NDLA club member section and go to the corresponding event where you registered. And then from there, you can download the certificate. I think you can download it by Monday evening. So by Monday evening, you can download your certificate of participation. With this, we are going to end this session now. Once again, thanks each one of you for coming and joining. Thank you.